All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome aboard, and thank you for attending this brief little workshop that I've put together. My name is Matt Makauka. I am a research services librarian and the subject specialist for the Harry W. Bass School of Arts, Humanities, and Technology, or AHT. And you might be wondering, okay, why is he doing this session? Formerly, I was the subject specialist and liaison for the Eric Johnson School of Engineering and Computer Science. And today's topic deals a lot with the STEM field. And when I was uh, the subject specialist for that area, that's when I started doing this presentation, and I've kind of become the de facto contact for H-index help. With that said, today's presentation seeks to introduce you to the concept of the H-index, which is a metric for measuring a scholar or scientist's impact, and how you can calculate the H-index using two library databases, SCOPUS and Web of Science, as well as with Google Scholar. Now we're going to begin by defining what we mean by the H-index and its intended purpose and benefits. Then we'll walk through the various tools used to calculate it. Again, the library databases in Google Scholar. And then finally, I will conclude by looking at some of the criticisms and shortcomings of the H-index. Because this should run relatively short, I think roughly 30 minutes, give or take a few minutes. So there will be plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. And okay, let me move on. There we go, new slide. So the H-index, what is it? The H-index attempts to measure both the productivity and citation impact of the published body of work of a scientist, scholar, or author, and it is based on the set of the author's most cited papers and the number of citations that they have received in other publications. Typically, those publications that are being tracked are scholarly or peer-reviewed journals. The index was created in 2005 by Jorge E. Hirsch, a physicist at the University of California, San Diego, and is sometimes called the Hirsch Index or Hirsch number. The H-index serves as an alternative to the more traditional journal impact factor in the evaluation of the impact of a particular researcher or author. Now, Hirsch intended the index to address the main disadvantages of other bibliographic indicators, such as using the total number of papers that an author has published alone, or using the total number of citations that they have received alone. The total number of papers does not account for the quality of those publications, and the total number of citations received can be disproportionately affected by the author's participation in a single publication of major influence, kind of like that one rock star paper that's gotten a lot of attention, but if everything else hasn't gotten a lot of attention from others, then that can on its own affect how their scholarly impact. Or alternatively, if the author has published lots and lots of papers, but each has gotten few citations from others. So the H-index is intended to measure simultaneously the quality and quantity of scholarly output, and it does so with varying degrees of success. That said, we will go deeper into the criticisms and shortcomings of the H-index later in this presentation. So simply put, the H-index is based on the distribution of citations received by a given researcher's publications. As Hirsch states, a scientist has an index H if H of their papers have at least H citations each, and the other papers have no more than H citations each. Or put it in other words, let's see here, there we go. A scholar with an index of H has published H papers, each of which has been cited in other papers at least H times. So again, the H index, it combines into a single number the number of publications and number of citations received by that author. So now I'm going to go into the demonstration portion of our little workshop here. And let me see here. Okay. All right, starting back over. So to access the R2 library databases, which that's just a fancy term for a specialized search engine to subscription content. That is where we get access to a lot of our journals and ebooks. And to access those at our homepage, library.utdallas.edu, go to that fourth tab. And then if you know the database you want, simply go click on the corresponding letter. So we'll go to the S listing. And then I will go ahead and launch Scopus. All right. And now you should be seeing a white page. So here we are on Scopus's landing page. Now, this is an abstract and citation database for scholarly publications in the STEM fields, business, and social sciences. It is produced by the publishing entity Elsevier. Elsevier is known for the full text publishing platform of Science Direct. We do subscribe to quite a bit of content through Science Direct. Now, Scopus contains millions of records, mainly for scholarly journals and conference proceedings, but it does index some book content as well. Users, when they enter into Scopus, can search by a variety of means, be it keyword, author name, author affiliation, and more. The typical way that Scopus is accessed is people just get into its main search page, throw in some keywords, search, and then from the results, they can scan those, click the full text at UTD link to access the full text. Now, before I begin my search in Scopus, I do want to make a quick disclaimer, and this kind of touches on the scope and limitations of Scopus. So depending on the database that you use for calculating your H index, each is likely to produce a different number. Big part of that is because each of these tools covers a different kinds and numbers of publications. So for instance, Web of Science, which is the next database that I will demonstrate, it has strong coverage of journal publications, but it is not so strong in conference proceedings. This exclusion can negatively impact certain disciplines, such as computer science, where proceedings are normally considered a high impact publication means. Scopus, on the other hand, tends to have better coverage of conference proceedings. However, for coverage of publications prior to 1970, it can be spotty or incomplete. So for recent scholars who have published mainly in the last couple of decades within this century, that limitation shouldn't pose a problem. But if you need to go further back in time for more historical coverage, Web of Science actually excels in that area. That said, back to Scopus. If you're doing an H-index search, you want to search by author. So it defaults to a search anywhere, but I would just go to the authors tab. And I'm going to use one of our well-authored faculty, Ray Bauman, over in the physics department, and he works with material science and a lot of the other STEM disciplines. So what you can do is put in last name and then first name or first initial. All right, and then search. And if it is a common name and you've got more than one match in the list, then you can determine from that list which is your professor based on affiliation. And then you want to click the box beside their name and go to View Citation Overview. All right, and that'll take a minute. Okay, there we go. All right, so here is his profile in SCOPUS. And notice up here it says author H index 112. So what we can do is we can adjust different factors to recalculate his H index. So, for example, self-citations can sort of boost one's H index. And so sometimes it's a good idea for a cleaner, more honest H index to exclude self-citations if possible. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll update it. Okay, and notice that that has lowered it just a bit, but now it's down to 109. And we can see down below that it is ranking documents by date and the number of citations down below. If I scroll back to the top, though, I can view H graph. There we go. So here's his H index of 109. And then to the left, it then ranks by his documents by most defaulting to most cited. So it looks like his key document was this carbon nanotubes, the route towards applications, written, excuse me, all the way back in the summer of 2002. And let me go back. Let's see here. And then if I want, for my options for saving this information, I can export. And it does have the ability to then generate a spreadsheet for that if I want, or I can save it as, there we go, a zip file. Just depending on kind of what tool you're using, they might have like a plain text option or PDF option. I can reformat this page for printing or email this this data to myself. So fairly straightforward there. Once again, with Scopus, I do really like they've got a very intuitive and easy to use interface. Just use the author search. And if you're having difficulty disambiguating amongst authors, just remember that you can then filter by affiliation and then get their list of publications there. Now, by comparison, we'll look at the next library database, which is Web of Science. So you'll access it very similar fashion. Go to the Databases tab and the W listing. And scroll down. There we go, Web of Science. And I'm just going to open it in a new tab. Okay, accept cookies. And this in function is very similar to Scopus, looks a little different. Web of Science is also an indexing and citation database that focuses quite heavily on the STEM fields and social sciences, although it does have some coverage of the arts and humanities as well. It is produced by Clarivate Analytics, a company dedicated to scientific and academic research and data analysis. Clarivate recently acquired a major news publisher, Thomson Reuters, and they're responsible for the Citation Manager application, EndNote, among other things. More recently, in late 2021, Clarivate acquired ProQuest, a massive software and content provider known for academic publishing platforms such as eBook Central, the database Dissertations and Theses Global, and numerous scholarly journal databases. A lot of those we do subscribe to. Now, like Scopus, Web of Science can be searched by keyword, author name, author affiliation, or by other rubrics. To grossly simplify a comparison of Scopus with Web of Science, again, both have strong coverage of the STEM fields and social sciences, such as business and management, but both are not so strong on the coverage of the arts and humanities. Both also primarily cover peer-reviewed and scholarly journals, but as I mentioned earlier, Scopus does tend, in my opinion, to be stronger in coverage of conference proceedings. Both do have historical coverage, but once again, Web of Science is stronger when it comes to pre-1970 publications, with its indexing of content going back as far as 1900. So similar to Scopus, you'll want to conduct an author search. So I will just do that here by going into the dropdown, changing from the default all fields to author, and then you can do last name, first initial, or last name, first two initials. And let's do RH. There we go. And we'll search. All right, 532 results from Web of Science Core Collection for Ray Bauman. And what I normally look for out of that list is, here we go, either go down to Researcher Profiles in the Refine Results filters, or if you happen to see his name, there we go, see it's highlighted there in the results, then you can click it there. And either way should, see here, let's go to the author profile preview, and I want to view the full profile. There we go. So Ray Bauman with University of Texas at Dallas. Here are some different names that he has published under and the organizations that he is affiliated with. So in this case, let's see here, I'm going to jump around. So Scopus had, trying to remember here, 520 documents and 562. So notice here, getting a different number out of Web of Science. And let's see here, what I can do is then view citation report on the right-hand side. And there we go. So 549 publications. It does break down citing articles with and without citations. It does not give me the option to filter out self-cited articles from the calculation of the H index. I am not sure. It's possible that they just automatically omit that. And then look here, H index of 109. Again, back over in Scopus, we got 112, so it was a little higher there. But after we had Scopus remove the self-citations, it actually brought it down to the same number. Like Scopus, you can use the export button and then export this out as either a text or Excel spreadsheet file. And then here we go, we can kind of look historically at his publications over time. So look at that going all the way back to the 60s, and then how often he has been cited over that time. And once again, just like Scopus, carbon nanotubes, the route toward applications is his top most cited paper of the group. Now, Web of Science and Scopus will be your main go-tos for calculating the H index. That said, what is available, and that will be available to you as UTD affiliates. Now, for a free option and to contrast, Google Scholar will also do calculated H index as well. There are some problems that come with that, or rather criticisms, but that said, like the library databases, Google Scholar will have considerable coverage of uh, conference proceedings as well as journals. However, there are some drawbacks with Google Scholar. Like Scopus, its historical coverage can be spotty as well, particularly with pre-1970 publications. Again, if it is a more recent author that you're researching, that may not factor in. But another major issue is, in my experience, is that Google Scholar tends to inflate the H index due to a variety of factors. For one, it does tend to cover more, but not necessarily better publications. It includes in its calculations books, patents, and select web publications, such as those out of archive.org. Um, and Scopus and Web of Science both are more limiting and selective in what publications they cover. By contrast, unfortunately, there isn't a way to filter out those publications. Also, Google Scholar lacks a stringent system for removing duplicated items. So, for example, sometimes the same article can be counted twice if it's been posted up somewhere with a slightly different or erroneous metadata to it, and that can count it twice. So that can boost or the number. Also, Google Scholar does not have a filter to ignore or limit the impact of self-citations. So in short, if using Google Scholar, do view the H-index that you find in it with a heavy grain of salt. So I have found that in Google Scholar, what you can do is just search by the author's name. And this won't happen for everyone, but if they have a profile, they will be highlighted there at the top as the first result, if you will. And you can just click on their name. And here we go. And so, excuse me, you can look over here to the right for the H index. So they have it calculated for all time. So notice that he's got a little bit higher here, 134. So they're definitely throwing in some extra content that the others are not getting. And unfortunately, we don't really have a way to filter those out. They've also got something called the I-10 index. Let's see here what they call that. I-10 index is the number of publications with at least 10 citations. The second column has the recent version of this metric for the number of publications that have received at least 10 citations in the last 10 years. Okay, interesting. So then if you're looking at a narrower set of dates, that of course impacts the H index number. And let me see here. I don't see that there's really any way to take, and let's see if I click that. It's Probably just a help page on the H index. Yeah, I think that's what that is. Not really seeing an option to download all of that. Hey, another shortcoming of Google Scholar. But again, pretty straightforward there with Google Scholar. But again, I should warn you to um, regard that with a grain of salt. And now let me see if I can get back over to my PowerPoint. Fun. Let's see here. Bear with me, folks. Let's see, let me do a stop sharing and then share. Go. All right. Just redo, launch the PowerPoint. Okay, we have done the demo. Now, let's go on to disadvantages and criticism. All right, so that wraps up the demo, but now as for some shortcomings, the H index is a field-dependent metric that is unable to be compared across different fields. So the H index only works for comparing other authors or scientists within the same field. That is a big part of that is because citation conventions differ widely across different fields. Um, so for example, an H index of 25 in biomedical engineering is not comparable to an H index of 25 in computer science. This even extends to fields within the same discipline. There is a handy brief article in Wikipedia that talks about comparing results across fields and kind of what Hirsch had considered to be good scores in some of the fields. And then sometimes the author's placement in the author's list can impact is not really considered in the case of H index. That they also see here. So in certain disciplines, the author's placement in the author list can is ignored and can really diminish or inflate an author's impact. Let's see here. Also, a lot of authors can game their H index by engaging in heavy self-citation. Now we saw with Scopus and Web of Science that you can, in a way, adjust for that, but be aware that that danger is there. Let's see here. The H index is also a natural number, which reduces its discriminatory power. So it's just going to be a whole number, no decimals, no nuance to it. It has been found that the H index does not provide a significantly more accurate measure of impact than the total number of citations given for a particular author or scholar. Also, newer or younger authors, if you will, those who have not been in the publication game for a long time are at a greater disadvantage compared to more established or older authors. That is, authors who have had more time to publish. The longer they've been around and have been able to publish, then the more likely they're going to have a higher and more accurate H index. Also, you may have noticed that the H index is limited in that it works very well for the scientific disciplines, but it does a disservice to the authors and scholars in the arts and humanities. That's because the H index, by and large, depends mostly on journals and conference publications and overlooks the impact of non traditional sources common in the arts and humanities that would nevertheless signify an author's impact and influence. For instance, things like blog posts, tweets, um, mentions on message boards and websites, and artistic artifacts, interactive media, digital artifacts, and so on, just do not get captured. So, for an arts and humanities scholar in a related discipline, um, these types of sources may have a greater impact than how often they've gotten published in journals or conference proceedings. Um, Lastly, another glaring criticism is that the H index does tend to omit books or monographs from its calculations. So, Scopus and Web of Science do largely ignore books and how often the authors have been cited in them, which again disadvantages the A&H community greatly. So, to remedy these shortcomings, many in the A&H community subscribe to a philosophy of altmetrics, which looks beyond the narrow set of publications that is accounted for with the H index. And with that, I'm going to, let's see here, let me stop recording.